All right, April 23rd, 2022, from 2 o'clock in the afternoon till 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we are having our open house. We are almost done with this, as done as you can be. So we would like for you to be able to come out if you're in the Aiken, Augusta area, anywhere right around here and say, I don't know, a 75-mile radius. Bring your car out. If you got a classic car that you're working on and we've helped you out with, bring it on to the show. We'd love to see you here. Address is in the description below me. Also, there's an email address below me right now that you can contact me to say you're coming, because if I get too many cars that are saying they're coming, I won't have anywhere to put you, and you may just have a drive-by situation. We may have to put cones up and say, sorry, we can't put any more people on the property, but all that's going to be available to you. Address, email, find me. See ya. You know, things are just different on a 60s car. They're even different from a 60s car to a 70s car. The 72 doesn't do some of the same things that the 64 does. And if you're talking modern cars, holy crap, completely different animal. So, real quickly this week, what I'm going to show you is the things that make a 60s car different from a 70s car. And I'm not even going to go into the modern ones because it's just so different that the world's completely messed up. For instance, door locks. Seems pretty simple, doesn't it? I mean, you're going to walk up and unlock your car. Well, you do, and you take your key and put it in, and you unlock your door. Well, it was unlocked, but you'll see. So you want to take your girlfriend out, and you're going to lock the car up because, well, you want to be a safe guy, right? Honestly, it makes no difference. On these cars, you can get a 5-year-old to break into this thing within about 2 to 3 minutes just by going out and grabbing a coat hanger, making a loop in it, and sticking it right in here through the glass. You'll find a lot of these old cars, this weather strip is chewed up because people have done the very same thing. But I digress. You want to lock the car. I'm going to open the door, push the button down like you do in a lot of the 70s cars, push this button in, and it doesn't work. Now, a cool safety feature that the guys at Ford came up with, if your windows are all rolled up, you cannot lock the door without the key, which I think is kind of cool. You can't lock your keys in a 60s car because, well, there's no way to do it on a Ford at least. GM, you might have been able to lock your keys in the car. Mopar, you might have been able to lock your keys in the car. But on a 60s Ford, you can't do it. And once you get inside of your 1960s car and it's cold as a stone, you don't just put the key in it and take off like you do in a modern car. No, there is a procedure. There's always a procedure. All right, now when you get in the car and you go to start it up, you're going to see a light come on. Now on this car it says Gen for generator. Later cars, when they went to the alternator systems, would say Alt. That light will come on and stay on until you start the car typically. When you start the car, the light should go off. All that light's coming on is to tell you, yes, everything is functioning. There is also, on most old Fords, an oil light over on the other side. That will illuminate as well for a second. What that is a bulb test to let you know that everything is copacetic. When you get oil pressure, that light will go out, and when the alternator starts turning or the generator, that light will go out. Just a little bit of a cautionary thing for you young guys that have no idea what those two lights are for. Well, other than that they come on. The oil pressure light, typically on a classic car, you are down at about 5 psi if that light comes on, and usually by then, you're done. The car's not any good anymore. The engine's not any good, typically, because if you're down at 5 psi of oil pressure, when that light will typically light up, bad juju has already happened. Key in. A little tap of the throttle to put some fuel, hopefully, down inside the bores. Then put it all the way to the floor to set the choke, and then try to start it. Oh, you should probably also push the clutch in, because I didn't push the clutch in. Oh, by the way, this one's the choke's not working. Squeeze the throttle. It'll get there. in. Do you leave right away? Heck no! You sit here for a couple of minutes digging on your 1960s AM radio with a little civil defense stuff on the dash panel. Very exciting. If for some weird reason the AM radio in your classic car does work, you turn it on by this knob. Say you want to find a station, this knob, you go looking for radio stations. I tune in, and there is a little, for lack of a better term, circle and triangle on a lot of the classic radios before, like, let's say 1967. This is the civil defense station point. There's two on the dial. What that triangle and circle is for civil defense. This is back when the Ruskies were going to drop the bombs on us. That's what that is. So if I were going to go tune to a civil defense channel, there's one right here. Oh my gosh, something's going on. I am at my civil defense point. I can listen to them. Let's say I want that as a station point on my radio. I pull out the button like I just did and push it in, and now that's set to my civil defense channel. I go down here. This one's so old, the buttons aren't returning. Anyway, if it did work and I pushed that button, it should go all the way down to the civil defense point, but it didn't. So let's try a different one. Maybe this one will work. You see it moving a little bit. That gives you an idea what's supposed to be happening. This radio is older almost than me. That's how those things work, if they work, like mine, of course, typically does not. But I have done an AM/FM conversion on this radio. There's a little jewel here. If I turn it on, you can see that a green light comes on. It's now gone to orange, telling me that it's off channel. You can have these conversions done. There's a couple of companies, many companies actually out there that do these. This one is ancient. I did this one probably back in the 2000s. And no, I'm not going to play music. Why? Because if any music comes on, YouTube will demonetize the video and even take it down because, you know, it's not licensed to me to use. Once the car comes up and is warm enough, you can tap the throttle one time, pop it to the floor, and it'll either take it all the way off choke or it'll go to a partial choke. Then you can probably drive away. You never go anywhere quickly in a 1960s car. This is going to be a minute. I'm not going to bore you with the time, but it would be a minute for it to run. So, we're ready to go. We're going to be going down the road, right? Yeah. We're going to talk about what we're going to do, because you know you want to get air inside the car, so you take your window cranks and you roll the windows down. I'm going to roll them up because they're already down. You roll your window up, or roll them down. So that's how you get air inside your car in the 60s. Almost every car in the low and mid line did not have air conditioning, even in the South. No AC. If you really wanted to get high cotton, you could take this, flip it open, and turn it towards you. The faster you go, the better your air conditioning. Yes, it's probably hot air, but in any case. On Fords, there is also a knob underneath the dash, which you won't be able to see me operate, but I'm going to pull out, and that opens up a vent underneath the dash that gets air coming in from your cowl vent into the interior of the car. The bad thing about that vent is it's cowl vent air, and a lot of air that's hot air is coming out from underneath the hood and going right into that cowl vent. So usually the air coming out of your lower vent is hotter than the air that's outside because it's coming from the engine bay. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut this one down. I'm going to go over to the F100 to talk about lights. I don't know that I can show you exactly what I'm talking about, but maybe I can walk you through it so you're not confused about why your lights are doing the things they're doing, because I've had a lot of young guys write in and ask me about why these things are happening. Go into the truck. Another thing to talk about is the lighter before I go to the truck. Here's the thing. You have a lighter in these old cars. Most modern cars have them. Some of them don't even have smoking packages in them anymore because people don't smoke, even though people are now vaping, which is smoking. I'm not going to get off into all that. That's a personal choice thing. But in order to operate your lighter, typically this one has been converted to a 12-volt power supply. So basically, I really don't have the element on the inside, but you would push this in. When this element got hot, it would pop out like that, and you could take this and light your cigarette or your cigar. Some companies call them cigar lighters. Some people call them cigarette lighters. And then, as you're smoking, going down the road, because, you know, in the 60s, everybody smoked because doctors were telling folks it was good for them. You can't make this stuff up. You'd pull this out, and that's your ashtray. Now, what I'm going to be using that for in this car is completely different than an ashtray. I've got plans, big plans for what this is supposed to be. But you had an ashtray in here that you can, tamp out your cigarettes and leave it full of ashes and cigarettes and burn the dash panel and all that kind of cool stuff when you smoke. Now that I've talked to you about all of those things, I'm going to go to the F100 and see if we can talk about lights. All right, now we're going to talk about lights, because lights is kind of an interesting subject. If you have a car built prior to 1968, you have parking lights. And the parking lights go out if you turn the headlights on. I've had a number of people write in and ask me, hey, what's wrong with my lighting system? Because every time I turn my headlights on, my running lights go out. That's because you have a 1967 and older car. Ford actually called them parking lights, not running lights. After 1967, Ford kind of used a Band-Aid to get parking lights to work. So what they had is they had parking lights that then stayed on whenever you turned the headlights on. So when I turned my parking lights on, that's what those were originally called. They were called parking lights, and still are, quote unquote, parking lights. Like if you're sitting on the side of the road drinking a cup of coffee from your absolutely useless glove box coffee cup holder, you have your parking lights on so people will know you're there. Then when you turn your headlights on, in a 1967 and older, those amber lights on the bottom would go out and you wouldn't have those anymore. They would stay on in the back as a low dim light in the back, but they would turn off on the front of the car, indicating that you were no longer parked, that you were actually driving down the road. I guess. That's purely a supposition on my part. After 1968, you have what you see on my F100 here, where the parking lights or marker lights stayed on, and Ford tried in a different number of ways to make those where they're very visible. By 1969, they had side marker lights that were lit that would come on whenever you ran your lights, yada, yada, yada. It could get really boring from here. So if you have a 1967 and earlier and you're not getting your lights, your parking lights staying on when you turn your headlights on, that's why. Nothing to worry about because it wasn't yet federally mandated. All right, that's our little episode on what makes a 60s car a 60s car. You may wonder, as an older guy, why are you talking about this? These are all duh things. They're duh to guys with hair this color. They're not duh to guys with Andrew's hair color. They just don't understand some of the stuff that goes on with these classic cars. They naturally assume they have power windows. They naturally assume that it should always have air conditioning. And sometimes are shocked when they get into a classic vehicle and it doesn't have AC. So, I wanted to do this to give those guys an opportunity to see all the little idiosyncratic things about a 60s automobile. Speaking of idiosyncratic, I don't know why. Go out and check out our Patreon account. There should be a list running up next to me over here, or maybe right over the top of my face. It just depends on Andrew sometimes. These are the guys who put their money where their mouth is. They're the ones that actually support the channel on a financial level. Anywhere from $2 to $50 to $100 a month. If you want to go that high, hey, Andrew will thank you, because a lot of this money goes toward his salary on a monthly basis. It also goes to support what we do with the kids here, with our teaching stuff, with how to run cameras. Some of them are learning how to do some stuff on the cars. So it is actually kind of a school thing that you're supporting as well. It's just a way to get kids out here and teach them that there is something other than sitting on their phone and doing Instagram. Although it seems like Instagram anymore might pay more money than we're making here. Also, support us by subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Click that bell for notification. We're on our march to 100,000 subscribers. We're getting close. We're like 89,421-ish. Because by the time you see this, hopefully it'll be a little higher than that. So far, YouTube has not cut any of our subscribers out. They do calls every once in a while. It seems like every time I get close to a number I'm trying to reach, YouTube decides that that's a good time to make a call. Hopefully they won't do that to us until well after we get over 100,000 subscribers. It'll help us do YouTube-y things. It puts us a little higher in the rankings when we're up at those kind of numbers. Plus, I want that dang plaque to put on the Paul wall that'll have the Paul wall on it. If you need an explanation of that, in the next couple of weeks, we'll have you one. Finally, and all, do me a favor and be kind to each other, love on each other, treat each other nice. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you next time on Autorestomod. I'm going to turn my lights off before I kill my battery. And this is a week when Cam's not here. That door you heard closing was Andrew walking off the set because he's got to go and do something else. He's got editing to do. We're shooting this on a weekday. Cam's not here on the weekdays ever, so that's what's happening. So Andrew's left, so now I've got to walk around and go turn the cameras off because Andrew has left the building. Or maybe he went in the building. I don't know. In any case, I'm not going to go drink a beer because it's not a Saturday, and it is in fact like 10 o'clock, maybe 11 o'clock in the morning. So it's, you know, a Coca-Cola, oh, I can't say that because they're not sponsoring us, a wet drink of some kind, probably water. Because I'm getting old and caffeine bothers me, and the more I talk, the more depressed I get. At this point, I guess I'll just go and turn the cameras off because we're done here. Bye.